Hey everybody, thanks for being here. Looking forward to this fireside. If you came last week, we had Aaron Lewis and Josh Moore, and we talked about architectures of participation, their work on the ground in Washington, D.C., working on a garden, and the work that goes into designing a garden as a place for exploration and play. And the thing to note about Ethereum is that this turns out to be the main analogy that is drawn for what Ethereum is. It is often described as this infinite garden. That's the meme that sometimes is used. You see it in the branding and in the storytelling around what's going on here. And it is an interesting phenomenon for sure. So last week we started with Bitcoin. This week we begin studying Ethereum, the peer-to-peer architecture for money that Bitcoin offered was paired in Ethereum with a programming language so that there could be different attempts to program value into peer-to-peer networks. Today, we're going to be joined in about 5 minutes by Alex, Stokes, and Barnabe Monnot of the Ethereum Foundation Research team. They both co-lead research at the Ethereum Foundation. And then in about 35 minutes, Tomasz, who was in Kernel Book 0 and was just announced executive director of the Ethereum Foundation will be joining. So this talk, I think, given our guests, will be much more technical, and we're going to try to tailor it in such a way that it hits all levels, but you could expect at times to be kind of scrambling a bit to figure out like where are these research efforts going. But we hope that it'll feel good. We're going to ask the team to do their part to help us from the ground up and lead us into the cutting edge of the research and the cultural efforts. This module starts with...
Vivek, one question. If it's possible, can you go full screen with the slides?
Yeah, sure thing.
Thank you.
This module starts with meaning and value. It talks about the hope that Ethereum has perhaps at a cultural level. The meaning module ends with this quote: "To know is to possess, and any fact is possessed by everyone who knows it, whereas those who feel truth are possessed, not possessors." The questions that are asked in the meaning module are about where meaning arises from, how we create it, and how we use the meaning that we can generate in our own lives to redistribute power. On a very practical level, sometimes it feels like power structures in this world are fighting against us, and the meaning module is an attempt to bring that back into our own sphere of control. And one of the suggestions with Ethereum is that it's in a long history of peer-to-peer technologies that is emphasizing our ability to make our own meaning and, more practically, to reprogram a new form of money and to encourage more forms of money. The other module that ties is on value. It is framed as potentially the ultimate question. And I'll pause here for a second and see if there's anyone who would like to respond to the question, what is value? And feel free to put the answers in the chat. Thanks, Alex. The things you can't compromise on. And thanks for being here. Understanding what value is led me on this path into Web3. Thanks, Christina. Anything that adds to a particular entity. Interesting. Megan. Shared belief. In the eye of the beholder. Interesting. Okay. Cool. Well, thank you for those as a beginning. The point from Victoria on the creation of shared truths is something that we start to point at in this module. We say with complementary opposites that the first way to kind of approach this question is say what breaks down value, and ideas like fear, envy, deceit, lies can break down value in systems, and that trust in clearly shared truths is a way to generate value. If there are clearly shared truths that a system, a protocol, or a set of people can rely upon, that is the type of thing that generates values. That leads us to the point at the bottom left, which is that our ability to create value has always been tied to the ways in which we tell stories about and with our shared records. And how do we create shared truth? Again, through complementary opposites, we get through fiction, through games that we can create. Proposer, builder, separation, the game of Ethereum staking, and using these fiction games that everyone can agree to play in and rely upon to create trust bases is an interesting way to think about how we can push forward games. So trust in clearly shared truths, our shared records, and our ability to come up with stories or games that result in magnitude improvements on our ability to generate value. One offer is the legal fiction of the firm. These fictions don't have to be just like short stories. They can be, an LLC or indeed an Ethereum. So we're going to go quickly because we have Alex here, I know, and I think probably Barnabe too. So Barnabe, thank you for being here. We're just going to go very quickly. This module includes a talk from Vitalik at DevCon 1, Understanding the Ethereum Blockchain Protocol. The protocol launches July 2015 with Vitalik, Gavin, and Joseph Lubin as key characters. Homestead, the first production release, comes in 2016. In March, by 2016 July, the big DAO hack occurs, which is one of the first and biggest moments in Ethereum's history. 3.6 million ETH is stolen, $50 million at the time. You can do the math on today's value. There's the first hard fork that was contentious in Ethereum's history, creating Ethereum Classic. You have 2017, where you get through that era, market cap surpasses $1 billion. There's the first highly popular game that congests the network to capacity for days on end, CryptoKitties, which actually was started by a Kernel fellow, Benny Jiang, who was in KB7. 2018, you have MakerDAO, who launches DAI. 2019, Uniswap starts. There's the Istanbul hard fork. 2020, the beacon chain date is announced. You have DeFi Summer, Compound, Aave, you're in finance. A lot of the decentralized finance primitives starts to join. 500K in ETH is staked for ETH2's launch. There's an SEC lawsuit against Ripple that does also impact Ethereum, starting to look at tokens more in a scrutinous way. 21, really quickly, you have London's hard fork. You have the launch of Optimism actually in 22, first LTU scaling solution. There's probably some others. I'm probably missing some history here. Important date, September 15th, 2022. The merge completes. 500K in ETH in that 2020 moment is now, it's live. It's made it. That's 2 full years. Energy consumption of Ethereum goes down 99.9%. It vastly changes the game or the fiction of Ethereum, and is a big moment in the history. And I really want to kind of stop there, and just kind of get into it. We have some history that's skipped in 23, 24, and 25. But I just want to kind of like skip ahead a bit to the current moment. You have at this point multiple layer 2 scaling solutions. You have interop that's a key focus. You have a vastly different competitive landscape, but ultimately you still have a lot of the same principles that the Ethereum Foundation relies upon. And we're lucky to have Barnabe and Alex at first for the next 27 or so minutes. And then we'll have Tomasz a little later to talk about like where we are in the story of Ethereum. Alex and Barnabe were just recently announced the co-leads of Ethereum Foundation Research. And I just wanted to bring a few quotes in to welcome them. In their posts, they talk about the 5 subgroups within EF research that they're looking forward to continuing really world-class research work into making Ethereum the best world computer it can be. And Barnabe in his post says that what's next is building a world computer for all to use. This means a censorship-resistant layer 1 at the efficiency frontier and scale for L2s to onboard as many economies as we can imagine. And for Alex, he mentions that the researchers at the EF are some of the most inspiring and passionate colleagues he's found in life, and he can't be more excited to support their work both inside and outside the EF. And seeing both of them step up in a big way publicly, continuing to build out Ethereum's research presence in public. And we really appreciate them both being here to talk a little bit about research and how it's going, and in general, tell us how they're feeling about the state of Ethereum today. So I'll stop there really quick to just say hi to Alex and Barnabe.
Yep. Hey, everyone. I'm Alex Stokes. That was a very nice intro. Thank you, Vivek. Yeah.
Thanks for being here, Alex.
Hi, everyone. Barnabe here. Thanks again for the invitation.
Yeah, really glad to have you both. Want to start with a really quick question just on like the state, Sepolia, Polsky for Pectra, just how you're feeling. Don't have to go too long into it, but just the lay of the land. I know it's March 6th, and there was thoughts about potentially announcing a date. Is that still feeling good? Are you guys thinking about other things in that? But we can go quickly on that until we get into some other stuff.
Sure. Yeah, I've been quite busy with this over the past week. There's a lot to say. So Sepolia and Aleshki, these are testnets that Vivek is referring to, right? So like we have mainnet Ethereum that, we all know and love. And the way to think about testnets are like staging environments and more like traditional, technology context. So imagine mainnet, but it's a copy. The funds are worthless. It's more just to do crazy experiments and whatnot. And, the idea is that we want the testnets to, be live and feel like mainnet. The that being said, if something breaks, it's really no issue and we can move forward. And I guess, a really big way they add value is by letting us do different hard forks we want for the Ethereum network ahead of mainnet, right? So you can imagine we do all this hard fork development, and then if we just went straight to mainnet from the initial R&D, we might not know that the code works as we expect, right? And there could be bugs. And so, Ethereum has never gone down, which is actually huge. And we're not going to start now. So it does actually help de-risk a lot of this. And we had a Haleski hard fork. I have forgotten the date at this point, but it was a week or two ago. Oh no, I remember. It was I think last Monday or Tuesday. And then we had Sepolia yesterday. And there were some minor issues. Well, there were issues on both. Haleski quite major, Sepolia relatively minor. But yeah, in any case, we had some turbulence on Sepolia. It was quickly resolved, and Sepolia looks great. Haleski, the situation is not that nice. The network is in a pretty bad state. And yeah, I don't know if we want to get into it because I don't think we have that much time, but essentially, yeah, there were some bugs that caused some pretty deep issues, and we're still working to recover them. So that all being said, given, this sort of staging idea and having testnets be a proving ground for mainnet, we don't want to speak to any kind of mainnet dates at the time. The core devs want to kind of fix the testnets we have before thinking about that. So yeah, that's where we're at now. But I can say we all want Pectra as soon as possible. And yeah, I think, it should be, well, I'll just say it'll be soon.
For sure. Yeah. Thank you for the update, and exciting to, just one step at a time for everyone who's newer to Ethereum core development. It's good to get a sense of just the release cycles, the attention that's paid to security, and ensuring that these launches happen more like rocket launches than traditional software development. So just at a core level, that's an important thing to note. Thanks for the update. And I want to go a little bit into the exciting research next. In Barnabe, your post in the beginning, you kind of quick fire through a lot of, let me see if I can put it back on the screen. A lot of the things that you're excited about for Ethereum research. You mentioned a bunch of acronyms, and I'm wondering if we can just quick fire through them. You have SSF, you have DAS, you have ELR&D, you have Fossil, ZK, PQ. And so for those who are less familiar with single slot finality or data availability or any of these, could you just quick fire through kind of what you're excited about that are obvious? And then the secondary question is to go maybe past the ones that are a bit more obvious.
Yeah, sounds good. I guess I would say first that all of these acronyms are tools to get us somewhere. So maybe I should say a bit more about the somewhere. And I would say to me, the main goal is really to bring as many users the benefits of Ethereum too. That means cheap fees, that means you need scale, that means you need verifiability. You always want the network for anyone to be able to check that things are correct and correctly processed. That you have these strong guarantees of hardness, and that you can always use it. So that's the censorship resistance part. So then you have these acronyms, which are proposals that we're making as future upgrades to the network. So the research team spends a lot of time thinking through different kinds of mechanisms that allow us to achieve this stuff. Trying to remember. Yeah, thank you. They're in the chat. So yeah, so SSF, for instance, is trying to get this guarantee of hardness that once something happens on chain, it's very, very hard to revert it and get that guarantee of hardness as quickly as possible. So single slot, and that actually has important consequences for the networks that are connected to Ethereum. So things like rollups. So Ethereum by itself, at least VL1, cannot process every transaction from every user. It's limited. And so you want to provide this guarantee of hardness to the networks that are outside of Ethereum so that they know, okay, the trade has happened, it has settled, and I can do other operations based on this. So the quicker you can provide this, the more interesting you can make the transactions of the users, and the more valuable you can make them. Then DAS, data variability sampling. It's the idea of, you might have heard of like these blobs. Blobs is almost like you can think of it as a raw material for rollups to exist in the first place. The more of them you can provide, the more users you can support on these rollups at the cheapest fees possible. And so data variability sampling is one way of just boosting the capacity of the network to provide these blobs and to give like a ton of scale to users on rollups. And so yeah, we're looking at within next year, or like this year actually, hopefully by the end of the year, essentially almost 10xing, or I think 16 times the capacity of the rollup. So today I think rollups already process 8 to 10 times more transactions than Ethereum mainnet. So we could be looking at much larger number by the end of the year, which I think is kind of mind blowing. That's really cool. Then there's EL R&D, that's execution layer R&D. So execution layer is another name for like the Ethereum L1, which hasn't been like, you might have heard of gas, which is the scale of the L1. That number hasn't been touched in many years. One reason is, there hasn't been like a ton of upgrades to make it more scalable. I think we're really revisiting that, and we really want to make like the L1 of Ethereum, which is still like a super important place of economic activity, as scalable as possible, so that we can have as many users as possible on it, while keeping the properties that we care about. And Fossil, that's a tool for censorship resistance. It's actually also kind of a significant step change in how we think about it. So censorship resistance is the idea that every time you want to do something on chain, like nobody should be able to prevent you from doing it, as long as you pay sufficient fees to the network. And Fossil is a way of boosting that censorship resistance by allowing more people at any given point of time to include transactions into the block. So today you have like this one block producer every 12 seconds. With Fossil, that block producer is augmented with 16 more partial block producers that also have the ability to put transactions in. So so if you're blocked by the main guy, you have like 16 more pipes that allow you to get on chain. And I think that's super important. Okay, then ZK, also amazing technology, zero knowledge. Sometimes, we talk about ZK, we don't actually care about the zero knowledge part, we care more about the SNARK part, which is the succinct argument of knowledge, which allows you to prove to someone that computation has been executed properly without needing to re-execute the computation. So when you do some kind of economic activity, that means, registers have to be changed, balances change, you execute smart contracts. All of that can be proved without needing to re-execute the computation. And so that gives you a ton of scale first, but also like this ability to verify things extremely cheaply, which is a super important property of the network. Last one, PQ is post-quantum. So this is something that, is more, we don't know when that will happen. The era where quantum computers are strong enough to break the current cryptography that we use. But that's kind of the things that we also think about in the research team. So not only like these 1 to 3 year things that we need to ship, but also existential risks that maybe play out over much longer timescales. And post-quantum is one of them. So we need to have the technology ready, in particular the cryptography ready, for when computers or quantum computers may be able to break the current stuff that we use. So even though it doesn't inform necessarily protocol design like right now, it's super important for us to have some capacity to think about this stuff. So that's a quick sample. I hope it was
Thank
a
you.
good follow.
Thank you so much for the quick fire through everything. Maybe for Alex, anything else, like not covered in these big ticket obvious items that, I know you've been deep down the Pectra rabbit hole now, but if you zoom up, and anything else that has your attention?
Yeah, I mean, these are the big buckets, especially for like the current R&D over the next few years. Let me I mean, these really hit all the highlights. One thing I could speak to, you might have heard about the beam chain idea from Justin Drake, and so that's something that definitely gets some discussion amongst the research teams at the EF. The idea here is to think about kind of what an evolution of proof of stake would look like, and kind of design a chain from scratch there. It's very early, so it's unclear if this is going to be like a sort of another merge or something like this. But basically, you could imagine like a set of upgrades that kind of takes the proof of stake layer and hardens it in a way that's like perhaps much more ready to stand the test of time compared to what we have today. And to be clear, you could imagine we make more iterative updates to like the system today that incorporates these features in this more speculative bucket of research. But yeah, that's I think pretty exciting and worth calling out. To give you an example, right, like the post quantum stuff that we mentioned here with the PQ item. So this is thinking about how can we essentially make these aggregatable signatures that we use on the beacon chain today, and just have them be post quantum. And that would sort of harden this new consensus layer against any type of quantum computers that might come onto the scene. And it turns out that, like the state of the research is that no one has really thought about how to do aggregatable PQ signatures. And so, yeah, it's definitely something floating around.
Fascinating. Very cool. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And I think the last line, I mean, I can tell for both of you, it's clear in how Ethereum is a technology project, it's a research project, but it primarily is a cultural project. And I want to talk to both technical and cultural critiques just for a moment. Ethereum will be my last question, and then if we have time for one or two before you guys have to go, we'll try to do that. But the critiques that seem to be coming to Ethereum these days, to me, my opinion is that they seem to emphasize short-term usability gains and profitability over long-term resistance. And the way to talk about this, like at a kind of social layer, is one thing, but being able to talk about it at like a deeper research level of the trade-offs that you're willing to make and the critiques that perhaps you yourselves are amenable to as you think about the short-term changes in the roadmap as it relates to some of these critiques. The most obvious one, I guess, that's been coming up is around interop and the like status that the Ethereum roadmap beyond just the EF has had to now kind of like finagle with lots of different cultural incentives and I guess really business incentives in some cases. So I guess it'd be helpful to think about like when you guys are thinking about it from trade-offs at technical levels, just like how that process is unfolding and how you remain open to these critiques on a short-term and long-term basis.
Sure. And when you say critiques, maybe could you give an example? Like, is there something specific or more just like the idea that like interop exists? Well, we would want interop to exist and it doesn't really exist today.
I think that's probably the most sizable one to point at.
Right. Yeah. So when we talk about interop here, what we're referring to is like this ability to have assets, say on some rollup, and then be able to like frictionlessly use them on another rollup, right? So we have this rollup centric roadmap with Ethereum. Barnabe just said this a few minutes ago. Like, you can't have the world's users use one chain, right? It's not going to work this way. While retaining the properties of blockchains that make them valuable in the first place. And so there's been a lot of research over many years now around like how to like square these two, and sort of resolve this tension. And the sort of solution space that the Ethereum community has settled on is this notion of rollup, where you can imagine pushing execution to like some other layer rather than the base layer one. And yeah, you do whatever computation you need to do, all the different apps that you use would live here. And then this rollup construction is a way to safely and securely operate off chain, but then still have all the properties you would get as if you were on the base chain. And so what happens then is anyone can go make a rollup, right? And there are constructions that are secure and again give you these properties that you're on the L1, but now there's like many L2s or these rollups. And the question is now, how do they talk to each other, right? You could go to like say Optimism, and maybe you have some funds here because you just like, I don't know, maybe you have a wallet there and it has some say USDC, and then say you want to go buy ETH, and there happens to be like a very nice price over on some DEX on Arbitrum, right? And so now it's like, how would you do this? Well, today the sort of like default way that you would think about it is you'd actually have to withdraw from the first rollup and then kind of redeposit back in the second rollup. This has many issues. A lot of them have to do with like the technical construction of mainnet today. There's actually a lot of issues. There's the L1 cost, and L1 has this sort of like at most you're going to be moving 12 seconds at a time, which probably if you're used to these like other applications even outside of crypto, that's like an age. But also there's construction, or there are issues with like the way we build rollups today, right? So there's just this notion of optimistic rollup where you go and basically the way that you like kind of settle back down to the chain, the way that the L1 learns about the L2 state, it kind of has its own settlement period that for security reasons is like quite long, say like 7 days or even longer. And what this means is that there aren't very fast and like smooth ways to like move seamlessly from one rollup to another. Of course, there are ways around this. So like, sort of market solutions have popped up, where you can basically just work with something that looks like a market maker. You can just say, hey, like some other entity has like verified the state of both these rollups independently. And so it knows if you make a request, hey, I want to like move some coins from this chain to that chain, it can verify that you have the coins on the first chain, and then basically, just out of its inventory on the other chain, just provide them at whatever address you need, right? So this is like one way to think about this interrupt question. And then the question from there is like, can we do better? Because for example, this like having this like market maker entity I'm describing, right? Like when you get into it, basically, this is a very complicated task. And you can imagine then that there's issues again with like single points of failure, because this is like a fairly sophisticated entity, so there aren't that many of them. And then moreover, just like given the actual way that like markets work and these decentralized exchanges and everything actually fall together, you might not get like the best sort of like prices, for example, in this DEX case that you could imagine otherwise if there was like better protocol affordances for doing this sort of transfer I'm describing seamlessly. So now the question is like, how do we do this? And there's many things you could do. Like I mentioned, there's like some challenges at the L1. You could imagine like having the slot times be smaller. So then you just like don't have this like latency that's just baked into the system today. You could think about ways to get around this like withdrawal period I mentioned with optimistic rollups. I mean, the most direct way is probably to move to like some ZK rollup, where basically the quote finality of the rollup is instant. And so there's like a bunch here, and there's even more sort of crazier designs you can imagine. People talk about shared sequencers, where it's kind of in the way I was describing how this like quote market maker would work in the like this interop sort of design I just gave. But you could imagine that you have someone whose job is to just basically validate both rollups together, and then they can again have the same check where they know, okay, you can go from one rollup to the next. And I mean, the cool thing there is that you don't even need to have this again third party, this market maker with like this inventory on both chains, because you just know, because you've actually you validated both chains at the same time, that that this like this cross chain movement or this cross rollup movement is valid, so you can just let it happen. There's like a bunch of research here, and I will shout out Josh Rudolph at the EF, who's been working on this quite a bit. And maybe I'll just pause there.
Fantastic. Yeah. Barnabe, if you have anything else, and I know we're at time, so Alex, Barnabe, please don't be shy if you have to go. We have Tomasz coming in a few. But Barnabe, if you do have anything, feel free to add.
Maybe going back to this question of like the cultural and the technical, one thing that I wonder often when I do this work is how much of the cultural struggles perhaps that we have sometimes are due to technical shortcomings. Like we say, we shouldn't have users doing this, we should have users doing that instead, it's more interesting, etc. But the point should be that anyone could do whatever they want as long as there's enough scale. Like it feels like we're thinking a bit sometimes in a I don't know, scarcity mindset of we need like certain things and not other things. But to some extent we are blocked by parts of the current infrastructure that sometimes make it too expensive to have meaningful small transactions that sometimes have a lot of economic value. Or we don't have the right technology, for instance, for privacy. Like privacy on chain is pretty expensive, so that also means that it's prohibitive. It's expensive in the sense that, yeah, you require a lot of operations to get these private inputs processed, and so that means, yeah, you have to pay more to be on the network, and so that just scales. So I don't know, like maybe there's a world where, yeah, removing all these technical blockers actually means that we have even even more exciting things that happen on chain generally. I think that's one part of the answer. Of course, like the second part is, yeah, we need to make the value proposition appealing to people who are developing these applications. Like they're just not going to, even if we have like a pristine, perfect protocol, we still need to go out and, yeah, chase people who come up with these new primitives, who like care about the same values that the network cares about, like censorship resistance, privacy, all of this stuff. So yeah, that's the part where myself and probably other researchers are less concerned with, because we're really heads down into the metal. But yeah, I find this perspective, at least to me, is the mental model I would have, like thinking about these questions.
It's wonderful. No, and I think really both of you, just congrats on a job well done at the beginning. The communication has been really clear, and Barnabe, especially like the questions that you're posing, even if it's in tweet threads of just like what's happening and what the researchers are working on. I think they pique interest. They give people a chance to peek underneath the curtains at where the research may be going, and basically see the questions that are being asked, which is oftentimes like the more important thing. The answers eventually start to come. Lots of interest in the chat about shared sequencers and intents and some other topics that you discussed. But I do feel like maybe the right thing is to let you all go today. You've had a busy day. Good luck with getting Pectra together. Thank you for coming, spending some time with us at Kernel. We'll see you hopefully sometime soon.
Yeah, thank you. Great to meet you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Bye, everyone.
All right, so that's Alex and Barnabe. The quick shill from Barnabe is one of those threads, most likely. So if you want to keep up with EF research, they are kind of the top of the list. We are lucky to now be joined by Tomasz, who is now on the call. Hi, Tomasz. Thanks so much for joining. So Tomasz was this week announced the next co-executive director of the Ethereum Foundation. He hasn't officially started yet, but that hasn't kept him from getting going. And if Barnabe and Alex were here to talk about the research focus, our hope is that Tomasz can give a bit of a sense of just how his last week has been and just how he's been feeling as he is set to take on this role. It's a pretty significant change at the Ethereum Foundation, but it is also a change that comes with some continuity. That's because Tomasz himself has been very involved with the Ethereum Foundation and with client development, and has led an extensive client project called Nethermind for at least 5 years now, if I'm right.
Wish it's 7 years, yeah.
7, yeah. And so he's been here, and Xiaowei, who is the other executive director, has been local to the Ethereum Foundation. So lots of continuity, but also lots of freshness. And perhaps, Tomasz, you could just tell us how not even your first official week, but your first week has been going.
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. I was telling to Vivek that years ago, I think it was 2020, 2021, one of those years, I participated in a Kernel program, and I was telling that I learned much from Vivek and his the program, the way it's prepared, about dialogue, about communicating. So I feel sometimes that when I look back, there was a moment when I feel like started communicating better. And then when Vivek reached out to me now, I thought like, oh, that might have been it, because I remember really spending some time watching the preparation materials. It was like mostly for the first session. And then later, like in many situations when you're busy, it like waned a bit for me, but it was really impactful. I was sharing many of these materials later with many people at Nanomind, telling them that communication matters, and this is where it started. So thanks a lot for that, Vivek, and I imagine that you helped so many people to be better in the ecosystem and communicate and connect. So the last week, I think what was most important for me was acting very fast and showing immediate like this communication around the announcement of the changes. So you see in the last few weeks, there was lots of uncertainty about the leadership structure of the Ethereum Foundation, which means I created very slightly aggressive, toxic environment on Twitter. And I kind of learned over time that there's really lots of space to remove toxicity, but just with few tweets that don't push back. Don't hit back. And again, this is the repeatable games that I remember from that time. I think that repeatable games is like really important, like how you behave. And I think I usually take a few hits by responding with nice, polite answers before showing any kind of stronger position, and like not anymore. I think especially in the Twitter community, when it's so easy like to respond back with a bad answer, to get just into this infinite bad answer and toxicity, that you have to be open to like get a few hits more and show, yeah, like we want to work together. So I was afraid how people react, like you're taking over some part of the leadership of Ethereum. Ethereum is with a very important values. So you enter as executive director, and you need to think of the organization internally, of the values of the organization and what that organization does for the ecosystem. And it's not a company that is focused on its own growth, but still it does want to measure impact on the ecosystem companies, and supporting them, but not supporting them in a way that the money that you spend is just exactly the money that you spend, but it actually invokes a lot of secondary, tertiary effects that those ecosystem companies or organizations, foundation can help you to make an impact and help Ethereum grow, and that they will always also be aligned with the critical values of Ethereum. And this is, someone used this short, it was like corporate style short crops, which is censorship resistance, open source, security, privacy for Ethereum. And this is one of the first questions that I had when they were asking me if I would join for the executive director. Each time I say it, co-executive director, but it's simpler to say it this way. I asked like, what would be the goal? And the goal was clear, like always have in mind improving impact of Ethereum, positive impact on people's lives, but while maintaining values, right? So you don't want to grow the network and do that by sacrificing the things that we care about. And I think that still I understood that there is a space for balance, like that you balance long-term potential and growth and long-term ability to use the impact of the acceleration to make an impact on values later. But this is obviously always tricky road. If you always put something for later, then it never happens, right? So coming back to this announcement, around the announcement time, when I was afraid how the community will react, we sat down with Xiaowei and I said, let's just write down everything that comes to our mind of what we did bad, of how people can attack us, what they can ask, what they can say wrong, like bring all the toxicity I can imagine, even all the bad memes that would happen here. And we just created that table just to feel prepared, like what may happen and like where our weaknesses are. And somehow, like, none of this happened. I mean, like, we said to ourselves that it may not happen, but it's good to know what you're embracing, like not to be surprised and feel for a moment totally without ability to respond. So it was overwhelmingly positive, and this this started the week, but you may have known, but what I did, I posted at the early moments, apart from like, thank you for doing this, I posted a Calendly link for 15 minutes meetings over Saturday and Sunday. And I thought like, this is Calendly link for everyone in Twitter, right? Everyone from Ethereum community. This will have outreach for thousands of people. So it might be very random connections, and just to feel the vibe of who connects. And over the next 2 days, I mostly had calls with like leaders of the absolutely top DeFi protocols, which kind of shows what the leaders do. You know, when it's like, I had some like founders of the multi-billion dollars protocols calling me on their Saturday 1 a.m. or something like that, and saying that's so great that we can talk to someone. You see, like when you really need to build that communication, and like sometimes they very often they had many channels, but it was major compliant that they would like to say that they established some connection in the future. And the Ethereum Foundation will respond, and to understand the strategy direction, will be able to reach out if something happens. And that was my goal over the first 2 days, like show openness to connect with others, to say, I'm ready to listen. I tell you who can help you at Foundation. I'll help you maybe with connecting in the ecosystem to build those bridges. Which is very related to how you can think about Ethereum, right? Ethereum is about network connections, building nodes, decentralizing. So if someone reaches out to me, I want to avoid them having to reach out to me again in the future if they have questions. I want to immediately build a bridge between them and someone else, either inside the organization or outside. So it's like focus on how can I remove from the entire domain of their possible problems in the future where they don't know who to talk to. Maybe I can remove half of them, and they will know in the future who to contact. And it accelerates a lot deliveries. You don't have to just chase people for deliveries if you keep connecting them and they know who to get answers from. So this was a major thing, and people liked it. People liked also the responses to those who came and just kind of tested us a bit by saying, look, the co-executive role doesn't work, or like, are you really going to change anything? And then you respond like just with something like, oh, thank you for everything that you've done for community. Like, I've been observing what you've been doing in your podcast for the last years. Thanks. Like lots of if I didn't see those podcasts, I was aware that many people actually do watch them, like some colleagues from Nethermind or somewhere else. I would mention that, like, to show people that we appreciate their work. And because that's also what's the feedback often is, some of these really, really big founders of large protocols, like, you think that there is a sense of fulfillment because there's maybe lots of money and success, but even there, at every stage of career, people want to feel that what they're doing matters for others, and that someone appreciates that contribution. So all of those small things so far were very, very helpful to establish good mood. Also, I think it might be a bit of a honeymoon when you have to start taking decisions, tough decisions, when you have to start telling no to people when they need something, because you have to always sometimes say no. This will be tougher, or well, there'll be some really some crisis to participate in. And the next few days, at the same time, I was attending the Ethereum Foundation retreat to meet people within Foundation, to understand the organization structure, its problems. And again, it seems so far like there's so many great, super talented people at the Foundation, and they ask for some minor communication improvements. Like sometimes it's so funny how problems that people describe like unsolvable, impossible to solve, and you create like one channel with the right group of people that like don't talk enough together, and you say like solved, like the biggest thing is already done. It's almost like this. It's like already vibe that just by answering very clearly, listening to people's questions. I don't know if I listened to Vivek's question properly. I hope that my response is consistent, and I was expected to talk for so long rather than wait for more questions. But I think thinking all the time about whether what you say still matters, whether it touches the question, whether it matters for what people wanted to hear from you in this particular context, whether you start talking too much about yourself and and kind of talking because you want to deliver something for yourself instead for others. All of this probably matters, and like building this kind of observer for how you communicate with others, that helps. And building as much clarity and admitting when you don't know something, and connecting people with those that can help as fast as possible, and running around and showing dedication. And when it's needed for a few days, sometimes it's enough to rest for a few days more later. Okay, I'm stopping.
No, it's fantastic. Thank you for sharing. And I mean, it's really, I wanna illustrate what Tomasz has been doing, because I think that all of us can learn from his style of communication, especially if interested in working in this style in open source community. And if there's any questions that anyone has, in the meantime, feel free to raise hand and we can kind of get to them. The starting point I'll share is because Tomasz talked about it. We do have 2 slides from this first module because we're so close to the beginning of kernel. The first is on the quality of listening, determining the quality of speaking, which is something that is oftentimes very hard on Twitter, to Tomasz's point, because the quality of speaking sometimes it gets really fast, really in your face. It makes it very hard for you to figure out how to respond in a positive sum or horizontal way. But when people are listening, I'm compelled to speak more truth. And this hope for horizontal conversations, this interactive dialogue amongst peers where participants can share trust and live within context. Much more meaning can be shared in this context. So this was in the last module, but it is really important in kernel. The other part that Tomasz mentions is this repeat interactions, possible win-win games, low miscommunication. These were the 3 stated conclusions from a game theory game called The Evolution of Trust that was in the trust module. Repeat interactions keeps the capacity for a relationship ongoing. You see the possibility for, okay, there's something here that could benefit both of us. And if we can improve our miscommunication, like basically do it less in some way, then that'd be great. But the most important part that Tomasz mentioned on the low miscommunication part is that you have to be willing to let accidental miscommunications happen, or don't assume bad faith just because a miscommunication happened. That shows up in the game, at least in fun form. It's like one of the characters trips and falls and accidentally does something that hurts the other player. And if you get really mad about that, then you miss out on the chance for letting somebody's miscommunications not overdrive the situation. If I zoom out to Twitter, it's like immediately Tomasz gives credit to the ecosystem, but like in his first March 1st announcement to now, yeah, I'll just scroll a little bit. He responds quite immediately to a skepticism about the co-executive director roles. He acknowledges that it's not 100% figured out. He supports Danny Ryan's announcement at Etherealize. He talks about Vitalik's interest in getting from Pectra to Fusaka and these blob targets that people have been talking about. The Calendly link comes up. So many people start to talk. He talks about that over the weekend, and then otherwise responds to a variety of things. You just see it. It's activity. And for somebody who maybe hasn't seen the Ethereum social presence for some time, it is just different. It's a different approach that Tomasz is taking, and I'm not even probably halfway through the tweets yet that he's done, and none of them are like so well like crafted. They have to have the right answer in them. No, it's just these are the things that are happening, and these are the things that matter, and I'm going to try to communicate them and be a part of them. So just think it was just really good work. I think it did a lot to make the community feel like there's something good happening here. Anyone with questions? We have John, please.
Hello, hi Tomasz. So I'm really curious to hear you talk a bit more about this idea of critical values. And just as context, I recently have been finding myself revisiting and reassessing some of my core values in light of some of the changes that we're seeing happening in the world, and asking myself if these are really need to have values or if they're luxurious. And I'm kind of tying my own shoelaces together and trying to follow through with them. So can you, is a very general question, but can you talk a little bit about how you think about this? When does commitment turn into obstinacy? And how can we evolve in creating values-driven crafts without corrupting our integrity?
Yeah, I think that on my side, like maybe the values that are there somewhere are very minimal, some kind of honesty and honesty, truth, probably integrity. It depends on how you understand integrity. I found myself on like hoping to do something and not having enough time to do that, like overcommitting. So this might be seen sometimes as lack of integrity, I mean, imagine. So let's keep it only as the honesty and I don't think I had need for that many more values. And but then, especially in the role of the executive director, like CEO, I feel that you set the values, and I set them myself, like in the vision and values for Nethermind, and mostly those were about like the loyalty and honesty. But then when I was coming to Ethereum Foundation, I was asking, what's my role? Like, am I to set vision, culture? Am I to accelerate to help with organization? And Aya becoming a president and Vitalik on the board, and Vitalik being thought leader and visionary, and Aya being this like protector of values on Ethereum. They said, look, like we'll show you what the values of Ethereum are, which means if I come to the organization and somehow I think that, oh, it's okay, I want to be executive director, but I would like to impose some different values, this would be dishonest. This would be terrible. So like you have to think, are these values something within like something within like can operate I feel like the sentence is wrong. And or is it something totally inconsistent with my own values? And I said, no. However, I told Vitalik and Aya, look, you have as a value like the privacy thing. And are you aware that in many interviews and conversations with people, I said that I personally believe more in the world of transparency, that I'm building blockchain for transparency and not for privacy, that I'm one of those more like the solar punks rather than lunar punks. And I think that like the world where everyone is like totally transparent on everything, they can observe almost like everyone's minds, it becomes like we become one and we build the world together, and we become this like of sum of all experiences, and practically throughout the world all the time, that what we're trying to do is like to keep the dialogue. I was just worried that maybe we are worse than the others that do worse things, but actually when we open everything, there will be some kind of all the possible evil and good, and we understand what the humanity is, and this is like the ultimate dialogue between people. And I said it more like a bit like a theoretical idea to discuss, to open some kind of different view on what privacy is. And they said, all right, okay, but like we care about privacy. I said, yeah, I mean, like I understand the meaning, the reason for privacy, and like it's maybe not for me because I grew up in the country which was after the transformations, and it was in a stable situation, and I never felt like constrained with my speech or with what I could do for a while, maybe like traveling over the borders, and I didn't have to hide what I say. And I particularly somehow like what governments want me to do. I kind of don't care that much because I don't do many things that like kind of governments don't allow you to do. But I understand it's just this is what I like, and it's totally different situation. And then some other people will need that privacy, and that was the idea for Ethereum. So I started thinking very hard of like how to make sure that people will not tell me like, look, you're dishonest, like you're saying that you fight for privacy, but you yourself don't think this is the most important thing here. So I started talking about this vision of the future of privacy, where actually it's connected with truthful transparency. When you build a world of machines, of like LLMs or agents, AI agents that surround humanity, understand everything about humanity, but they remain machines and they'll never share between people like the knowledge. So you kind of create a system of laws that reshape and adjust to what we all want. And it still keeps the privacy between humans, but it's actually absolute transparency in front of machines. And I started wondering whether this is possible. And we had those explorations. But one thing I thought, dropping all of this, coming back, yeah, like I can represent the organization that cares about privacy, because I did always think that you need to deliver ability for people that are censored, that cannot share, that are actually for various reasons doing something that is absolutely ethical, moral, for many people, for me probably as well, but they cannot do that without privacy. So I didn't feel dishonest for sure, but it was important conversation at the beginning. Like, can I represent the organization with particular values as an executive director? Because my role is not to set the values, not to try to override it, not to be like politically active, but just help others to express those values and deliver impact for the world. Long answer. Sorry for that.
Anyone else? Maybe Oliver or anyone, if you'd like.
I'm happy to share. This just came. Hi, I'm Oliver. My handle on a lot of things is Mapachurro, and this interesting tension about transparency and privacy just came up at my day job. I work at Consensus. I'm in customer success, customer support, and we were talking about these interesting use cases that we're seeing now as more fintech gets hooked up to blockchains, like the Gnosis Pay card and the MetaMask card and things like this, where you can build really great things that allow people to almost permissionlessly use their crypto in the real world, right, on traditional financial rails. But in most of the architectures that have been used so far, most people are going to be subject to a sort of a doxing by default once they hook up an EOA, a crypto address to a KYC'd registered financial product. And that's very interesting. And one opinion that I heard from somebody involved in this inside our company is like, look, man, we're not trying to run a coin tumbler here. I'm not here for the criminals. I'm not here to do illegal stuff. It's not what we're trying to enable. Like, screw those people. We're trying to do this right. We're trying to make something that's like useful to people in the real world and legitimate and not illegal. And I was like, yeah, that's good. But the other side to that is what I posted in the chat. Like, are you saying, well, if you're not doing anything illegal, you won't mind just putting it all out in the open, it's a slippery slope. I don't know. It's great to see this stuff sort of getting integrated into real life and into legitimate use cases in the real world. Of course, more crime is conducted in the US dollar than any cryptocurrency, period. So it's a weird tension. That's all.
Tomasz, if you're willing, Oliver, thank you so much for that. If you could speak about this tension, but also what you're seeing in these consumer fintech side of things. Just, Etherealize is obviously focusing in that direction. So like, as you're seeing things emerge, like the big categories of things that might be relevant to you, I imagine this is one of them. So Oliver, thank you again for bringing it up. You could talk about this tension a little more, but also like, is this becoming one of the bigger focus areas for you, or are you seeing them emerge? If you can weave that in, Tomasz, that would be great.
Yeah, I had conversations with Julian, the GC at Foundation, and we are talking about it. I started telling me about the contracts that even if you want to be absolutely transparent, then there'll be so many contracts that you enter into where the other party doesn't want you to be transparent. So you have to be like selectively transparent about your side of the contract, but very often it's impossible. So it's very contagious, and the same like combining your transactions through Gnosis Pay. I've heard of compliance and knowing Gnosis Pay, like the leaders of Gnosis, they are obsessed with privacy, but even here, like they have technological challenges to introduce privacy to Gnosis Pay, and I know that they've been working on it. I'm not sure if there's already some solution. And some other providers maybe will say, look, so maybe the first step, I'm focused on one thing. I personally don't focus on privacy. I think as long as it's obvious for the user what are the consequences, this should be fine. That everyone solves some problem, like to the extent as they can. It's difficult. I don't like hear people saying user don't care about privacy, or users don't care about privacy, users don't care about decentralization. When I hear those sentences in a crypto community and in blockchain community, I immediately feel really bad. It's like, it's just justifying that you can drop this. Because like when you say, oh, when I don't provide privacy, I have 1 billion users. If I provide privacy, I have 10,000 users. Not really. It might be that's exactly the same 1 billion users, just like thousands of times less often, because sometimes they really need this privacy situation. So it just uses less and it's harder to make money, but all of those users, 1 billion users, may choose your product every day just because sometimes it provides privacy. I guess it's a bit like, I don't know, using Brave or Chrome or so on, and people select it because it provides like the incognito mode, right? And you don't say like, incognito mode has just like so many less users. So I think it matters, and people do care about decentralization, about privacy, and it's worth to think about in the product where there are values. The tensions of transparency, and it's like you want transparency for the government and privacy for people, and you end up sometimes with privacy for the government and transparency for people. When you provide privacy, actually you cannot selectively say who you provide it to, which means that if you provide it for users, then almost for sure the governments will use it as well. So this is particularly tensions. Like, you cannot start censoring and telling you have privacy or not, because then it will be always with the stronger ones that will dictate who is private or not. And coming back to the second question quickly, the reaching out to the enterprises, the financial institutions, they were always users of Ethereum for me. Like when I think, oh, who are Ethereum users? Like I think of a financial institution that comes like billions of dollars to Ethereum as a user that really like worries about things and cares about things and it matters. Whereas like institutions have people beside those that build them, that care. Like institutions already some kind of result of the decentralized world of billions of people like organizing themselves somehow and creating cultures and caring about something and trying to solve problems. And even if sometimes it looks, I used to work at a bank, an investment bank, and I looked around and I've seen all those people caring about their lives, caring about asking me questions. What really is the value that we provide? Like in the FX market, we're just making money. I was telling them, like sometimes someone there in a developing country needs a loan to build something, to build a school and so on. They need to participate in the FX market. And just because the majority of your volume is on, I don't know, speculative Euro USD trading, it doesn't mean that you're not solving problems for people who really, really need it. And then if you remind people that actually with all of this, like sometimes building something for money actually incentivizes you for all of those edge cases that feel like it's irrelevant, but they bring people the purpose of building it. So I feel it's a bit like this with Ethereum as well. Like if you think that there is nothing evil there, that is like in many of the cases, sometimes it feels a bit evil, obviously, but like people sometimes like need to gamble, want to lose money, want to experience a bit of drama, like want to do some crazy things, experiment, and you're afraid that those users are really affected. But very often, like you meet later someone who, like you met probably lots of people that lost some money in crypto, but they feel totally like, yeah, that was fun. I'm like, I lost like $10 or $100, like maybe if it's less for someone. So, and then you think like, oh, am I building this and playing with it, experimenting with it? People were together building something super impactful for others. So not justifying like evil. I say that like something that we think that is evil is actually totally not, or sometimes very, very evil. And I would love to remove all of those cases, but it's a bit like trying to think that you want to remove evil from the world. It's a very ambitious thing. I would love to do it. But if you start thinking of the protocol as neutral, then you start thinking that like there are many different types of users, and institutions, enterprises are very important users because they're also impactful for others and enable a lot of borderless trade. And for me, in particular, vision for many things that I've been doing was borderlessness, like permissionlessness. I have this like very strong memory from like when I was 5 or 6 years old, when I was trying to go to Berlin from Poland, I think just before the Berlin Wall fell, and it means that I remember like 3 or 4 borders, and then my parents saying that they didn't have some kind of special visa, and they got like turned back, and we had to go back, and I was like super disappointed we didn't go there. But I remember just like border after border after border, and I thought that maybe this is a good direction to think of borderlessness, like create economic activity across the borders, and Ethereum that delivers that for sure.
Amazing. We're almost at time.
Time, right?
One more question, or do you have to have?
Yeah, I think I do have time. I was just worried about you.
I appreciate if you'd like, we can.
Yes, thank you. You already mentioned a little bit about it, but I think I like to do inefficient networking, and it's about like meeting the person and not the position. So I'm curious more about your background and what has made you what you are today, who you are today. Like, I want to know you more as a person.
Yeah, I can tell you a very quick bio. I mean, quick. I hope it will be quick. So I grew up in Poland, not that far from German border. So I went through probably everyone in different parts of the world have like some significant event in the world history. For Poland, it was like the transition from communist to the free market, like around 1989 and beyond. Then it was like hyperinflation period after the significant market reforms. Then it was like around us, the fall of the Soviet Union and the fall of the Berlin Wall. And then I think that was much more stable. And maybe I would say like in a broader European sense, there was lots of instabilities and difficulties that I remember, but these were the events in Poland and the first free elections after the period of communism. So like, and the excitement around elections and the change to happen. So like as a kid, when you're surrounded by something that really affects the adults, it's like it's super strong, right? Like the emotions of parents that you remember. And then, yeah, then the school and the university, I studied like in parallel the business administration, marketing, and the computer science. So 2 universities, just like rushing between 2 universities in the same city every day. And somehow throughout my life, it's always like this, that I just double or triple everything, like whether it's jobs or the commitments, and that's why I continue now if the mind was staying at foundation. So so both universities were great help to feel like I ended up doing exactly this, like running a business organization around computer science things. So it was super important. And that was in Poznań in Poland. And then I just after graduating, I dropped one of those, and then I graduated from the other. And after I still did majority of those both. And I went to London and I started working with the financial institutions, so CME and then Citibank. At Citibank, I was developer near the trading desks, near front office, but developing like UIs for the FX. So it was mostly a front-end UI developer. And I was running a small team, then moved to a hedge fund. So I was working with a hedge fund for 1.5 years. But before working with a hedge fund, because I was in FX in a bank, I wanted to learn about Bitcoin. I went to a meetup in London about Bitcoin. It was this funny situation when I was wearing a suit with cuff lengths, white shirt, and I walk into this like underground vaping bar. And everyone, like, just when I entered, everyone started hiding things from the table. I was like super scared because it was early Bitcoin, Ethereum, no, not Bitcoin early, but Ethereum early community, like 2015 or so. I bumped into one guy who was just installing Ethereum DevNet or something like that, 2015 or so. And he told me about Ethereum, and I went back home. I started reading about it a bit, but I forgot. And then I went to the bank, and I told someone that I went the day before to learn about Bitcoin. And there was this one guy sitting at the bank who never talked to anyone, and was just like working, finishing work, and leaving. And this is the one time when he just like raised his head and said, "Oh, you went to a Bitcoin meetup?" and like 2 weeks later, he asked me if I still look at the Ethereum because Ethereum goes up, and he made me like look at it again. So this guy was actually for like 3 years or so coming to job as a contractor and investing everything in Bitcoin every single month after getting the pay. And I think he contributed to the fact that I didn't drop it at the time. And then I started reading for like year or two. And when I was a hedge fund, I already was reading and analyzing everything related to Ethereum. And again, it was a job on the technology side. I was working with like treasury, P&L, fund accounting. So processing a lot of reconciliations, which is surprisingly mess. You know, when you do like the house budget and you like every month, I was doing that in the past, like at the end of the month, it would be like this. I would obsessively try to find this last $8 that don't match. Like just like, what is it? Where was it? Like it was, I would have this obsession. Everything had too much, a bit like accounting stuff. And then I would see that hedge funds have exactly the same thing. It's just like the amounts that are missing are like $10 million here. Like we cannot find it. Like, where is it? Where is it? And you find like 2 years later. And so pretty funny. And it's the same. And you help to build the systems to track it. It's a bit more to track. And then I decided to like start a business. Like, and whatever it would be, I decided to start Ethereum because Ethereum went up. I had some money. So I sold some of all my coins, like $100,000, and I decided on starting a company. I was living in London at the time. And the next 3 years was vain. It was crypto winter, and I was just building and learning. And I decided to, at the beginning, I wanted to explore building Ethereum client, Nethermind. And I started learning how to, I was already like learning how to code on blockchain, but using like 10, 15 years of experience of coding pretty complex systems. And the 3 years were hard, but after 3 years, like around the time when COVID happened, I remember that I felt like, oh, like everyone will just be working remotely. Everyone will start to have money that they don't know what to do with. They start playing games, they start gambling. Probably this is really opportunity. And it was, like I started just exploding at the time. And it was a bit of this DeFi summer. And I noticed that at the same time, like I was playing StarCraft or chess, and the rankings of my rankings like went up suddenly because there was so many new people playing like chess and StarCraft, playing games. And I saw like, yeah, they also go gamble and play DeFi and so on. So it really opened this like connections around the world, and it made the company start growing fast. And nowadays it's like 300 people. The Nethermind, and then from Nethermind, because of that history, I was working as a core developer within it through the crypto winter and beyond, always caring about Ethereum. And like we built the Nethermind as a company around Ethereum values, and that's why recently Aya reached out and said like, look, maybe you tell us like who could be the next leader. Maybe tell us, and then we had conversations, and here I am. But like, it's still closing some conversations around this conflicts. We were trying to check because we were trying to keep it very confidential until announcement. But then only then we could really see what the reaction of the people in the inside the EF would be. And so far, it's also very positive. Like the organization supports me. So this is the story. Sorry, like it always feels like too long a story to talk about yourself that much.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you for your answer, Tomasz. There's one more if you have time, and we will definitely let
Yeah,
you.
I do, but like I feel
Yes.
bad about you having to stay. Probably it's late for some of you.
Oh, yeah, on our calendar, it goes until 5 minutes from now. We were gonna let you go early, but this last one is from Sam.
Uh-huh.
The question is in the chat, is about your expectations going in as co-director. How do you think about advocating for values and also sharing the leadership? You've also mentioned, of course, there's Xiaowei and both of your leadership styles, but you mentioned Vitalik as, still there, visionary Aya still there. So how you think about those dynamics, and I want to add with Sam, because this part is important. It's like again, what is emerging, like internally, but also externally. You have like trends that have your attention. You have these people now who you've talked to, who've signed up on your Calendly. Like is it too early, or are you starting to feel some trends about these expectations?
Yeah, I'm like, so from the starting first, the vision as a co-executive director and the things to address. There are a few things I think of: communication, delivery, roadmap. So the roadmap is like just clarity about the Ethereum roadmap and clarity in the process of how this roadmap arises, and inclusion of the leading teams that built on top of Ethereum applications in road mapping, like including them in the process. Communication as communicating with the community, communicating with large players, with enterprises, maybe with governments through other institutions, ideally not directly, just to explain and to help to understand and to help to regulate what needs to be regulated. Communication internally, delivery as efficiency of, I think delivery is only not only the product delivery, but also delivery for the efficiency of organization. So delivery of the operations teams, of everything that they have to deliver for the people inside the organization. So those three things name most of the areas that I focused on. Plus you have like everything around the values. So are there any problems around security, privacy? So support from some of the privacy applications they'll focus on. Then security, recently you've seen Bybit, so addressing this and showing the security of UX. Safe in collaboration with Safe. Today there was a report from Safe team. Martin Koppelman was really serious about it, and I think he's like strong voice and understands the risks beyond this situation. And the other things, well, I think that open source wise, it's part of communication to make sure that our research is visible for all the enterprises as well, and not only for the crypto community. And the censorship resistance as generally, just by the fact that it's Ethereum, is good. And every now and then we see the challenges that are a bit more and more complex, like interactions between financial markets and like MEV blockchain. So we always look at it. So I don't feel that it's my role that much beyond what I've been doing before, and beyond what the other teams are doing to drive it. And the co-executive director with Xiaowei. So we started talking to each other for a few days. We had this conversation before the announcements, like how this will play out. Like we haven't known each other that well before. We knew about each other because we collaborated between the teams. And we agreed on the setup where, if you don't want to slow things down, if you want to communicate, then just like duplicate things instead of treat it as two halves, where someone has to chase two halves to combine them to get this like response and like confirmation. So we had to set up the format where each of us can take decisions independently, each of us can initiate any action independently, and we fully trust each other. We can communicate when we need. But we'll see long term. So far it works, and we naturally started driving the areas where we feel like more natural at. For me, it's a bit like being faster, louder, like sometimes breaking things. For Xiaowei, it's just like stopping things, researching, answering thoroughly, thinking about the structure, organization, and helping a lot with answering team team challenges here at EF. And I see already like both of us delivering a lot of those things that teams were asking us about in the context of Vitalik. I think showing the entire organization, explaining them what those roles means for many individual contributors, the roles like board member, president, executive director, it's really hard to understand them if you didn't do each of those before. I kind of did each of those before in various organizations, so I understand the tension that should be healthily between those roles and how to present to people, look, this really works. It's not that simple. Like those teams do really keep each other in check a bit, but also have to understand that they have to run together. Organization goes forward. So this is about being there, and then I think I totally forgot the rest of the question. So if you don't mind.
I think you really hit it on all fronts. But if you have anything else to add, please.
Was there anything else, Sam, about this? Yeah, thank you a lot.
I think Sam with the thumbs up. Good. I think I really want to let you get back to it, Tomasz. I know that now for everyone here, they have a better understanding of how you operate. And it's just special to see you in action and to continue the work that you've done. Thank you to also answering, your own personal history. It's always nice to know like how these things evolve, and excited for your spirit and how it balances within the broader spirit of Ethereum, and looking forward to this next phase. I think it's going to be great.
Vivek, it's not only the kernel and communication, but also collaboration on Gitcoin in the past, and like it really helped Nethermind survive. Like there was a moment when practically someone gave us $2,000 that probably made us survive this like deepest winter through Gitcoin, and it was like our main and the only source of revenue for a few months. And it allowed us to go through just to that time when everything started going better. So thank you. Like it just like contributed so much to any of perceived success of Nethermind and my own ability to survive. That's like I really owe you a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And take care. Take care, everybody. We'll see you soon. See you next week. Go well. Good luck with everything.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.